All right. How about we get things going here? It looks like the ad break is about to end. So we'll pop on over to the chatting screen in just one moment. And here we go. Hello! Welcome to an adventure. I hope everybody is having a great Wednesday. Welcome back to Archival Adventures. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully the audio quality is decent. Hopefully you can hear the music. Fingers crossed on all of that. Let me know if there are problems. I've already got some things to thank people for in the chat. Stephen Joyce, hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for the resubscription. 31 months. Absolutely awesome. Key Squared, hello. I saw a couple of follows that popped in. Krath 1990 and Mario BG3. Thank you for the follows. Welcome everybody. Welcome. I have, of course, been gone for a little bit. If you're a regular viewer, I was not live last week because I got sick. It happens. So the planned stream focusing on Virginia Tech's nuclear power plant that was supposed to happen last week has been rescheduled. That will happen on March 13th. I think it's the 13th. It's whatever Wednesday is that week. I think it's the 13th of March. So we will still get that content, just not today. I'm just double checking now because I have to. March 13th, yes. Anyway, welcome in everybody. I am Rogan27, also known as Anthony Wright de Hernandez, Community Collections Archivist at Virginia Tech. If you're new to this program broadcasts live on both my personal Twitch channel as well as the library's Twitch channel. And we just take a look at things in the archives and just see what there is and have a fun time. I am in the process of getting new tech. If you're a longtime viewer, you'll know. I have to set up every week fresh. And so sometimes we get technical difficulties because of that. Oh, hi, Hannah. I am working towards changing that. So the order has been placed and I'm just waiting for the technology to arrive. To move this, this experience will be happening from my office at some point in the near future once I have all of the necessary cameras and lights in place. And about that time, I'm gonna you might see me go live with some sort of like technical test stream because I just have to figure out the logistics and exactly how it works. But I think instead of actually like going live on both channels, I'll be using Twitch's new I forget what it's called, where you can have another streamer like join as a guest. So I will be using that, and around about that time, once I get that figured out, I think we'll also be live on for simultaneous broadcast on the library's YouTube channel. Whatever they call guest star this week. Exactly. Yes. to move this, and because of green screen, it looked like you were going to move the whole building behind you. Well, yes. That bridge is out, just right outside, in that direction from where I am. But I should still have a green screen once I move to my office, so we'll see. I don't know. It's perfect because it looks like it's on your shoulders and everything. Yes. Anyway, so that's the update on where things are with the stream. I'm back. We should be good to go until I think the next break planned is Juneteenth. Will be the next time there's not an episode. So I do think that we should be live every Wednesday between now and then. So what are we doing today? Or wait. Hi, Sterling. Computer did not want to cooperate, but you're here now. Yay! I was sick for a week or whatever and forgot entirely what I was doing. I forgot my order of operations and everything. Since this program, we look at things from the archives, which means we're looking at history. It's important that we pay attention to the history of the institution that owns the materials we're looking at. So we do take a glance at this at the start of every one of our streams. Virginia Tech acknowledges that we live and work on the Tudelo and Monacan people's homeland, and we recognize their continued relationships with their lands and waterways. We further acknowledge that the Morrill Land Grant College Act of 1862 enabled the Commonwealth of Virginia to finance and found Virginia Tech through the forced removal of Native nations from their lands in Western territories. We understand that honoring Native peoples without explicit material commitments falls short of our institutional responsibilities. Through sustained, transparent, and meaningful engagement with the Tudelo and Monacan peoples and other Native nations, we commit to changing the trajectory of Virginia Tech's history by increasing Indigenous student, staff, and faculty recruitment and retention, diversifying course offerings, and meeting the growing needs of all Virginia tribes and supporting their sovereignty. Virginia Tech acknowledges that its Blacksburg campus sits partly on land that was previously the site of the Smithfield and Solitude plantations, owned by members of the Preston family. Between the 1770s and the 1860s, the Prestons and other local white families that owned parcels of what became Virginia Tech also owned hundreds of enslaved people. We acknowledge that enslaved black people generated wealth that financed the predecessor institution to Virginia Tech, the Preston and Olin Institute, and they also worked on construction of its building. Not until 1953, however, was the first black student permitted to enroll. Through inclusive VT, the institutional and individual commitment to UDPROSIM, that I may serve, in the spirit of community, diversity, and excellence, we commit to advancing a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. So it's just always good to glance at that at the start of our streams since we're looking at history. What we're looking at today, specifically, comes from the William J. Heron Speculative Fiction Collection. I mentioned, I think at the end of last year, or maybe the very first stream this year, that we're going to do more from this collection. Sort of last year we did a little sub-series focused on high-energy physics. This year we're going to do a little sub-series focused on spec fiction. This is actually the 5th time where the entire stream will be focused on materials from this collection. The very first time was the very first stream. And then since then, the first stream of the second year of streams was also focused on something from this collection. We've looked at things a few times. Anyway, this collection was gathered by William J. Heron, collected between 89 and 94. It has a bunch of stuff in it. We're mostly looking at the pulp magazines, of which there are issues from British, Australian, and American titles. And there are quite a few of them. So we've got plenty of stuff we can explore and look at and just enjoy. from this portion of our collections. But the item we're looking at today is Captain Future. We're primarily looking at the first issue of Captain Future. I technically, physically have the first 4 issues here with me. I think it's the first 4 issues. I know I have 4 issues. I think it's the first 4. I haven't actually looked. Anyway, Captain Future is a United States title. Looks like they had a total of 17 issues starting in winter of 1940 and going until the spring of 44, but without one in fall of 43. I would be curious as to why. Published by Better Publications, edited by Leo Margulies and Mort Weisinger, and Oscar Friend. A companion magazine to startling stories and thrilling wonder stories. We've looked at thrilling wonder stories before, I know that. Captain Future was an attempt to establish a space opera equivalent to the popular superhero pulps, Doc Savage magazine and the like. The brief glances that I've had at this thing, it reminded me very much of superhero magazines. So that makes total sense. I'm reading to you from the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction, which is a freely available public encyclopedia on the internet that has lots of information about this type of thing. So let's see. Each issue ran a complete novel about tall, cheerful, red-headed Kurt Newton, alias Captain Future, Wizard of Science, or Man of Tomorrow, according to the magazine's successive subtitles, with his trio of assistants, Grag, the giant metal robot, Otho, the man-made synthetic android, and aged Simon Wright, the living brain. He thwarted a succession of evil, and more often than not, green, foes. I love the way this is written. All but 2 of the novels were written by Edmund Hamilton. We'll take a glance at who Edmund Hamilton is in a second. Let's see. Twice under the name Brett Sterling. They were later reprinted in paperback form. After Captain Future had become a casualty of World War II paper shortages, the character continued to appear intermittently in startling stories until 1946. And again, 1950 to 51. Captain Future also serialized some abridged reprints from Wonder Stories and published a few short stories, including Frederick Brown's humorous sci-fi debut, Not Yet the End, in winter of 1941. I don't believe that I have the winter 41. I will check though. Even more than its companion magazines at that period, Captain Future was unabashedly juvenile in its appeal. Okay. Yeah, let me just double check what the other 2 issues that I physically have present with me are. I have spring of 1940 and summer of 1940, as well as the winter 1940, which is the first issue. So I do not have physically with me at the moment the one with Frederick Brown's item. Okay, cool. So who is this Edmund Hamilton person? Fun fact, the Captain Future novels take place in the 1990s. Oh, that's gonna be fun. I wonder what they thought the 90s would be like. Clearly they thought we'd have robots. Edmund Hamilton. Born 1904, died 1977. U.S. author, married to Lee Brackett from 1946 until his death. With E.E. Doc Smith and Jack Williamson, he was one of the prime movers in the development of U.S. science fiction, sharing with those writers in the creation and popularization of classic space opera as it first appeared in pulp magazines from about 1928. His first story, The Monster God of Mamirth, for Weird Tales in August 26, was which vulgarized the florid weird science world of Abraham Merritt, only hinted at the exploits to come. Found science fantasy a fertile vein, collecting this story and others in his first book, The Horror on the Asteroid and Other Tales of Planetary Horror. Okay, so he did a volume about horror and sci-fi. Let's see. His importance to science fiction was only properly signaled 2 years later with the publication of Crashing Suns, one of the founding texts of the kind of space opera with which he soon became identified. A universe-spanning tale, often featuring in early years an Earthman and his comrades, not necessarily human, who discover a cosmic threat to the home galaxy and successfully, either alone or with the aid of a space armada or both, combat the aliens responsible for the threat. So that is a classic trope in science fiction. Stephen Joyce, congratulations on being randomly selected as a VIP for this stream. I mean, you're a VIP anyway. We often raid Stephen at the end of this broadcast. If my mods wouldn't mind, could you give Stephen a shout out, because Stephen's amazing. Let's see. Tales of Interstellar Patrol. So far, nothing that he has written is jumping out at me as something that I've heard of before, but that doesn't mean anything. There's lots of speculative fiction writers that I haven't necessarily encountered before. Let's see. Hamilton. The main failure of Hamilton's in subgenre is a lack of cohesion, as he seemed to lack any sense of strategic plotting, which was tied to an inability to sell the shot, and that is to time and to approach from obscuring angles of vision the moments of sense of wonder sublimity. That lack would of course be remedied in the work of E.E. Smith. Hamilton persisted with the format until the 30s, occasionally under pseudonyms including Robert Castle. I've heard that pseudonym before. Hugh Davidson, Robert Wentworth, and the house name Will Garth. Much of the material remained in magazines, erratically put into book form. That doesn't seem unusual for speculative fiction or early sci-fi. Dangerously for his career. This is an interesting way to enter into this discussion. Dangerously for his career, Hamilton also occupied much of his time in the early 1940s with the smoother but significantly less lively Captain Future series, which is what we're looking at today. Published 1940 to 1950 by Standard magazines in Captain Future and afterwards in Startling Stories. Not all the Captain Future stories were by Hamilton. 5 were signed with the house name Brett Sterling, of which 3, The Star of Dread, Magic Moon, and Red Son of Danger, were by Hamilton, and 2, Worlds to Come and Days of Creation, were by Joseph Samuelson. One further title, The Solar Invasion, being by Manly Wade Wellman, who we've heard of before in looking at stuff from these collections. Each tale was written to a rigorous formula in which the super scientist protagonist, backed by 3 aides, 1 robot, 1 android, and 1 brain in a box, who after raising the young future on the moon, now help him bring the interstellar villain UI Quarn to justice, a task which takes several volumes to accomplish. Hamilton's Captain Future titles, eventually released in book form, begin in order of book publication with Danger Planet, include Comet Kings, which was probably the outstanding tale among them, and end with Captain Future and the Space Emperor. That is really interesting. They start with Danger Planet that was published in 45, but include things that were published earlier. And in fact, Captain Future and the Space Emperor was the very first one in the Captain Future pulp magazine. Very confusing. Looks like there is in 2005 a collection of linked stories, Captain Future Man of Tomorrow, which assembles the final 7 tales, reduced to novelette length and first published by Startling. The ongoing Collected Captain Future sequence, beginning with the Collected Captain Future Wizard of Science Volume 1, collected in 2009, projected to include the entire series. The original idea for Captain Future had come from Mort Weisinger, senior editor with the Standards Magazine Group. Later in 41, Weisinger shifted over to DC Comics and took many of his top writers with him, including Hamilton, who worked for some time in the mid-40s as a staff writer on Superman, along with Henry Kuttner and others. Alan Steele's Avengers of the Moon radically updates the Captain's origin story. So it sounds like it went through a lot of the permutations that superhero comics really went through as well. It just never caught on in the same way as superheroes and became an actual comic book. Like, it never quite got there. Cool. There's more, lots more, apparently, in this encyclopedia entry about Hamilton, but we got a general gist of him and the Captain Future book. Why do I feel like Danger Planet is a comic book? It might be. Let me look. Danger Planet was not specifically linked, was it? Nope. Nothing in Encyclopedia of let's check ISFDB. Ooh, amazing. It's surprising to me that it's not in the Internet Science Fiction Database. Typically, this includes a lot of things, and individual stories get listed here as well. But it's a wiki, and so it seems like nobody has actually put in an entry for Danger Planet. Let's try fiction titles. Ooh, Danger Planet. Brett Sterling. So it only pops as novels. Edmund Hamilton, which are the same person. Let's check magazine. Yeah, I'm sure there are other places we could check, but ISFDB doesn't specifically have it as a comic book. It just shows up as a novel. Haven't seen it anywhere. I've been looking, but in that looking, I discovered that there is an entire series based on The Little Prince. Each book is illustrated and is about one of the planets that he visits. That's amazing. Oh, The Little Prince is such a good work. I'm going to actually like show off actual Captain Future first issue. Captain Future, Wizard of Science. Hi, Tatarlus. Oh, Captain Future, the stories on which my favorite anime show of all times is based. Wait, what is the anime? I I didn't see reference to the anime. I'm very curious what the anime is. I just realized I do not have control over the camera zoom at the moment. Give me 1 second. The Little Prince series is designed for kids, but it looks so cute. Who cares if it's designed for kids? We can still enjoy it. I love The Little Prince and I've read it in 2 languages. Yeah, I'm very curious about what is the anime that Captain Future is based on, or that is based on Captain Future. So this is the first issue, winter 1940, Captain Future, Wizard of Science, 15 cents, so 15 United States pennies. There's a paragraph on the anime in the Captain Future Wikipedia page. Of course, the site that I didn't go to. I went to the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction and to the Internet Science Fiction Database. I didn't go to Wikipedia. Pulp sci-fi hero, space traveling scientist. Stories and art. Anime. In 1978, 1 year after Hamilton's death, Toei Animation produced a Captain Future anime television series of 53 episodes based on the 13 stories, or based on 13 of the stories. Captain Future's later iconic suit design itself was designed by Tadano Tsuji. Despite the differences in cultural references and medium, the animated series was true to the original in many ways, from the didactic scientific explanations to the emphasis on the usefulness of brains as opposed to brawn. That is awesome. And it looks like it's one of these Japanese cultural things where in Japanese it's just basically made to sound like Captain Future. Kayaputan Future, I think might be how it's said. I'm not 100% certain. I'm grabbing this link for y'all. That is amazing. I did not know that there was an anime. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out this anime. But as I'll just share the screen here real quick. As you can see on the screen here, the Japanese and then the English translation of the Japanese, it's basically just Captain Future. Which happens a lot with things that weren't Japanese and are adapted into Japanese. Sometimes they just end up with that literality in taking the English words and just making the Japanese sound like the English. I don't specifically know what that is called, but it is definitely a thing that happens. That's a screenshot from the anime. Oh, I can't zoom in any further. Anyway. Transliteration. It is kind of a transliteration, isn't it? Anyway. Let's take a look at the magazine, because I'm now even more curious. I went to the proper scientist sources. Yes, Tantarolas. I went to the ones that I go to when I'm researching the history of science fiction. So, here we have the first issue, and I do not know for certain, character-wise, who the people on the cover actually are, but I presume that the giant metal robot in the center is Grag. We do not have Danger Planet in our collection. Sterling, it's possible that we do, and that it's just not cataloged. Some of the like actual like paperback novels from the Heron collection are not cataloged. But they would also be in offsite storage, so it's not an easy... It would not be especially straightforward to figure out if we do have it, but most likely, and for functional purposes, we don't. But if this is Grag, the robot, the other two companions are supposed to be an android and a brain in a box. I'm wondering, is this Captain... I almost said Captain Planet. Is this Captain Future, and then this is Grag, and then is this maybe the android? Otho? Meaning that we just don't have Simon Wright, the living brain, on the cover here? No idea. Maybe we'll find out. There might be... Captain Planet just unlocked a part of your brain. You would say yes to the assumption that this is... that those are who the characters are. That's what it seems like to me. That this is the android, this is the robot, this is Captain Future, and that we just don't have the brain in a box on the cover. But featuring Captain Future and the Space Emperor, a complete book-length novel of planet conquest by Edmund Hamilton. So, let's take a look inside. I know. We're like a half hour in, and I haven't even opened the item yet, but actually, we should look at the back cover first, because the back cover is an ad, but I do like finding the old advertisements. You can make your own records if you sing or play an instrument with Home Recordio. Home Recordo. Such a creative product name, Home Recordo. You can make a professional-like recording of your singing, talking, reciting, or instrument playing right in your own home, too. No longer need the high prices of recording machines or studio facilities prevent you or your family or friends from hearing their own voices or playing. No experience necessary, no mic fright to worry about, no complicated gadgets. In a jiffy, you can set up Home Recordo, play or sing or talk, and immediately you have a record which you and your friends can hear as often as you wish. Think of it. I just made this record with the new Home Recordo. Yes, Bob, and it sure sounds like your voice. It's wonderful and so simple. Please let me make a record. Can you guess the price? I mean, I showed the price to you before you had a chance to guess. It was $3.98 for this recorder that would record a record. And, you know, you had to just cut this out and send it in with cash or a money order. Anyway, I find that the old ads are always sort of fun to look at. All right, I will zoom out here. Let me just get the book positioned, because I got foam blocks to put it on. It is a pulp magazine, and if you're unaware, if you are unfamiliar, pulp magazines are called pulp because of the kind of paper that was used to print them, which is low quality paper, which means they deteriorate really, really easily. And so they tend to be some of the more fragile items. I think the comic on the back reads better if the two ladies sounded sarcastic. Detective Zen, you're probably not wrong. Alright, so we have another ad right inside the cover. If this were you, laid up by sickness or accident, what would it mean to you to get up to $150 a month? Amazing new policy. Costs only 3 cents a day. If sickness or accident should strike you, lay you up, disabled, stop your income, perhaps for months, don't face the additional worry of money for bills and expenses. Protect yourself and your loved ones with the remarkable low-cost Sterling Sickness and Accident Policy. For only 3 cents a day, this amazing policy provides actual cash. This sounds like the sort of local ads that would come on television that just are so much louder than everything else. That's what it sounds like to me. Detective Zen! Resub 19 months, thank you so much. Yeah, Sterling, my name being said by this thing makes me feel like I'm catching strays. Pays cash for common sicknesses and all types of accidents. But honestly, this is not terribly different than like broadsides from the mid 1800s. The formatting is different, but the tone is very much the same as broadsides. We'll have to do an episode sometime where we just pull a bunch of broadsides, magazines like this that have old ads in them, playbills that have ads in them. There'll be a lot of cigarette ads when we pull playbills. But as well as we've got various other forms of advertisement. We should just do an entire episode where we just look at old ads, because they can be really interesting. Can you guess? On the right side, it pays cash for sickness, so they pay you to infect you. I think this is... It's insurance, so it's Sterling Insurance Company. I think the closest equivalent today would be something like accidental death and dismemberment or long-term disability insurance. I think those are the kinds of things that would be equivalent today. Proto health insurance. Hi, Fuddlegum. Yeah. Come here, I'll cough on you. The next page is also an ad. I had to bail out in a pea soup fog. 1. I took off from Pensacola on a night training flight in my single-seater fighting plane, writes Cadet Harbert. Later, I was... Wow. Sorry, I need to zoom in, because it's just small enough that I can't make it out easily. Later, as I started homeward, a heavy fog rolled in. The landing field was blotted out. It was too dangerous for myself and those below to attempt a landing. I had to bail out in that pea soup fog. Heading for open country, I circled at 5,000 feet until the gasoline gauge showed empty, then jammed the stick forward and catapulted into space. I landed waist deep in the wide mouth of a river, marooned by deep water on all sides. I grabbed my flashlight, and despite the soaking, it worked. Guided by its beam, 2 fishermen eventually found and rescued me, thanks to everyday, fresh, dated batteries, which you can depend on in emergencies. It's an ad for batteries! I had to bail out in a pea soup fog. Works for both World War II and The Exorcist. Who knew that just decades later, pea soup would be ruined for us by a horror movie? I mean, for me, pea soup was ruined for me by the taste of pea soup. But I do understand. All right. Ooh, and then we get the title page that has the table of contents. This is a lot more ads than some of the earlier pulps that we've seen. Captain Future, Wizard of Science, Volume 1, Number 1, Contents, Winter 1940. A complete book-length science... Again, like we've encountered this word before. I'm familiar with the word, and my brain stumbled in the middle. Sorry. A complete book-length science fiction novel. Captain Future and the Space Emperor by Edmund Hamilton. Follow the quest of Curtis Newton, wizard man of science, as he scours the worlds of tomorrow in the hunt for the greatest interplanetary outlaw of all time. And then it also includes some short stories. So having the little like novel is pushing towards like that superhero genre that moves towards and ends up as comic books, but including short stories by other authors puts it more in line with the just other pulp sci-fi magazines of the day. Invisible by Eric Frank Russell. No one could see Shorty Mason, but he couldn't look ahead. Around Infinity by Oliver E. Saari. Ivar Augustus's murder plan couldn't beat the laws of physics. Those are intriguing. Like, those little blurbs are really well done, because now I'm really curious. His murder plan couldn't beat the laws of physics. Now I want to know. I want to know more. Beginning a science fiction serial, The Human Termites by Dr. David H. Keller, one of the greatest science fiction classics of all time. I am very confused by that blurb. How can it be a science fiction classic if it's brand new? Just very confused by that. And then special features. Under observation. The Future Men. The Worlds of Tomorrow. The March of Science. And the Future of Captain Future. Ooh, that sounds really interesting. I'm curious to see what they thought the future of Captain Future was. Captain Future, published quarterly and copyright 1939 by Better Publications Incorporated, 22 West 48th Street, New York, New York. N.L. Pines, president. Single copies 15 cents. Yearly subscription for 60 cents. Instant classic. Just like instant soup. You just need to add water to the story. Ooh, read our companion magazines, The Phantom Detective, Thrilling Detective, Popular Detective, Thrilling Spy Stories, Thrilling Mystery, Thrilling Love, Thrilling Ranch Stories, Thrilling Western, Thrilling Sports, Thrilling Wonder Stories, The Lone Eagle, Skyfighters, G-Men, West, Popular Sports Magazine, Popular Love, Popular Western, Everyday Astrology, Texas Rangers, Range Riders, Startling Stories, Strange Stories, Detective Novels Magazine, Masked Rider Western Magazine, Rio Kid Western, Thrilling Adventures, and Black Book Detective Magazine. 60 cents? Does this mag think I'm made of money? I mean, this was during World War II. So I think we'll skip over this good job in radio ad. Oh dear. More advertisements. Important announcement. I will give my complete money-making display outfit free to reliable men and women who need cash. That sounds like a pyramid scheme to me. Oh gosh. I do not know if this is an experience that you have had. It's not one that I had for the majority of my life, but it's apparently a thing in large metropolitan areas where if you go to some of the more, if you go to certain restaurants that consider themselves to be upscale, and you enter the restroom, there will be someone there who basically has a briefcase of products that they will try to sell you while you are in the restroom. They don't work for the restaurant. They just have a briefcase of products that they want to sell you. And sometimes it's like they want you to pay them $10 for a spritz of cologne or something like that. It was the weirdest thing. I had never encountered that before. And then I went to Stella's Fish Cafe in Minneapolis. I think the last 2 times I went there, there was somebody in the restroom doing that. And I was so confused because I had never encountered that before. But apparently that is a thing that happens in some metropolitan areas. And that case looks exactly like that sort of, it seems like it would be perfect for that. There's a club in DC that still does that. World War II's paper shortage is why it quit being printed. Oh dear, foot itch. Athlete's foot. Oh, so many ads here. Let's see. Under observation. This is by the editor. The Wizard of Science, Captain Future, the most colorful planeteer in the solar system, makes his debut in this America's newest and most scintillating science fiction magazine, Captain Future. This is the magazine more than 100,000 science fiction followers have been clamoring for. Here, for the first time in science fiction history, is a publication devoted exclusively to the thrilling exploits of the greatest fantasy character of all time. Follow the flashing rocket trail of the Comet as the most extraordinary scientist the 9 worlds have ever known explores the outposts of the cosmos to the very shores of infinity. Read about the man of tomorrow today. Meet the companions of Captain Future, the most glamorous trio in the universe. Greg, the giant metal robot. Otho, the man-made synthetic android, and aged Simon Wright, the living brain. This all-star parade of the most unusual characters in the realm of fantasy is presented for your entertainment. Come along with this amazing band as they rove the uncharted spaceways in each issue of Captain Future. And readers, please drop us a line and let us know what you think of this first issue. Under observation will be our regular correspondence department, where you can air your views in public. Be sure to send those letters along. The editor. I know living brain screams glamorous to me, Detective Zen. I'm very curious. It's interesting to me that Captain Future comes with his own set of sidekicks. It's not like Batman, who had Robin. It's like if Batman started out with Robin and Batgirl and Alfred all as active sidekicks all the time. We must get you an EQ filter for old-time radio sound. Oh, I bet, yeah, the entire Bat family. I love the idea, Steven. It'll take some exploration. Basically, I just have to find one and then get permission to install it. Reminiscent of Doc Savage, who came with a whole supporting cast of specialists. Indeed, Key Squared. And in the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction entry, it referenced Doc Savage. And I only know Doc Savage because on my Twitch channel, I've been playing through some old video games. I've been playing through the Ultima series of games and Ultima Worlds of Adventure 1, Savage Empire, was partly inspired by the Doc Savage series. And that was honestly the first time I had ever heard of Doc Savage, was when I started looking into the history of that game before I played it on stream. If anybody wants to see the VODs of me playing through Savage Empire, it is on my personal YouTube channel. You can find that link in the About section on the Rogan27 Twitch channel. I only know him because I looked him up because I enjoyed Aaron Alston's Doc She, which was based on the series. I did not. What medium is that in? I'm not familiar with Aaron Alston's Doc She. Oh, we will take a look at the beginning of this, because this is the actual start of the series, which... Oh, it's a novel series. He was referenced in a GURPS supplement? Wow. Fantasy Noir Adventures. GURPS, for anybody who is not familiar, is the name of a role-playing system. It's GURPS, and it stands for Generic Universal Role-Playing System. So that's amazing. Here we have the very beginning. On page 12 and 13, Captain Future and the Space Emperor. Aaron Alston, probably better known for writing for the Star Wars X-Wing series. It's funny, I know a lot about the pulp era of like sci-fi, and I know a bit of like sci-fi novels and things like that once you get to like the 90s and on. But there are huge gaps in my just off-the-cuff knowledge. So now I'm really curious. I haven't looked at the X-Wing series, so yeah, I'm gonna have to explore Aaron Alston because I wasn't familiar, and now I'm curious. All right, so illustrated by H.W. Wesso, it looks like. Follow the quest of Curtis Newton, wizard man of science, as he scours the worlds of tomorrow in the hunt for the greatest interplanetary outlaw of all time. Author of The Three Planeteers, The Prisoner of Mars, etc. So by Edmund Hamilton. I love, like, we've got this wonderful black and white illustration on the pages. I do think there is possibly an occasion for us to drop the historic terms note. And in this case, it's not a term, it is the illustration itself. I'm gonna zoom in. So in this illustration, we've got these aliens who have a somewhat different facial structure. And it's clear that this individual over here is supposed to be one of those aliens. But in profile, this individual comes across very much like some very racist stereotypical illustration from earlier in American history. Um, it that illustration very much evokes some of the racist illustrations of black people that show up throughout the 18th century, early 19th century. And while I think in context it's clear that this is meant to be one of the aliens, that profile just really comes across as very similar to some of those very racist illustrations. Otherwise, the illustration seems fine. It's just that artistically really harkens back to some of those really not great illustrations from history. Chapter 1. Doom on Jupiter. The chill, uncanny breath of dark menace millions of miles away pervaded the spacious, softly lit office high in the greatest of New York's mighty towers. The man who sat there at an ebonite desk was worried. Facing a broad window which framed the stupendous pinnacles of the moonlit city, he could feel that cold, malign aura. He shuddered at the thought of what he knew was happening even at this moment. "It can't go on," he muttered sickly to himself. "That horror must be stopped somehow, or else—" James Carthew, president of the Earth government, which had ruled all humanity since the last World War, was not an old man. Given context, this is published during the Second World War, so talking about during the last World War, who knows? It could be World War V. 50 was considered the prime of life in these days, but the appalling responsibilities of guiding the destinies of all mankind had aged this man before his time. His gray-shot hair was thinning around his high forehead. There were deep lines of strain in his keen, powerful face, and his dark eyes were haunted by haggard weariness and lurking fear. As the door of his office opened, his thin hands gripped the edges of the desk convulsively. North Bonnell, his slender, dark, young secretary, entered. "And the one thing you want your government to do is rule." Oh, yes. Sadly, I didn't get an audio notification. So the ad break has begun, and I didn't realize that it was about to start. So I'll pause and wait for that to end, because it is an automated thing. I'm actually going to take a second, and I'm going to put us on to the Be Right Back screen, and I'm going to stretch and get some water. So I will see you all in a couple of minutes. Okay. The ads should be ending here in just a couple of seconds. So, welcome back. And, you know, once they actually end, I'll say welcome back to everybody else. But, I need to make sure I hear that audio alert, because I did not get it. And, yeah. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Apologies, that automated ad break sort of snuck up on me. Apparently, we've been on for about an hour now. We're getting a taste of the beginning of Captain Future. I was reading here. Let's see. Okay. North Bonnell, his slender, dark young secretary, entered. The liner from Jupiter just landed, sir, he reported. I had a flash from the spaceport. Thank heavens, Carthew muttered. Sperling could be here in 5 minutes. He knows I'm waiting for his report. Bonnell hesitated. I hope he's reached the bottom of the mystery out there. The special committee of Jupiter citizens called by televisor again this evening. I know, calling to protest again about the conditions on Jupiter, Carthew said bitterly, each one of them trying to voice a louder complaint than the others. You can hardly blame them, sir, the young secretary ventured to say. Things must be pretty horrible out there on Jupiter, with that hideous thing spreading as it is. Sperling will have found out what's causing it, the president asserted confidently. He looked at the perpetual uranium clock on his desk. He ought to be arriving any second. A scream from somewhere in the lower levels of the great government tower cut him off. It was a woman's scream. There were many girl clerks and... Ooh, gosh, boy, oh yes, historical terms. Just harken back to earlier in chat. There were many girl clerks employed here in the huge government headquarters for Earth and its planet colonies. Even at night, some of them were always in the building. But what had frightened one of them into uttering that agonized scream? James Carthew had risen to his feet behind his desk, his aging face paling with sudden apprehension. The secretary started violently. Something wrong, sir? I'd better see. He started toward the door. It was suddenly flung open from outside. Young Bonnell recoiled wildly. My God, he cried. In the open door stood a hideous and incredible figure, a monstrosity out of nightmare. It was a giant hunched ape, hairy and abhorrent. Its squat figure wore a man's zipper suit of white synthesilk. In the too tight garment, the creature looked like a gruesome travesty on humanity, its brutish, hairy face a bestial mask. Jaws parted to reveal great fangs. Its eyes blazed with a cold glitter as it stared into the room. Look out! Bonnell yelled frantically. Yeah, Hannah. So apparently in the future they have fixed the radiation issues with things like uranium. Otherwise that clock is going to be a problem. Yeah. Also, apparently, my noticing that the alien harkened back to earlier representations of black people as ape-like might have been because the aliens are described as ape-like, which is certainly problematic, but not exactly unexpected. A white-faced guard in the dark uniform of the planet police appeared in the door. He leveled his flare gun swiftly at the monstrous ape. Wait! Don't shoot! James Carthew cried suddenly as he looked into the monster's hairy face. His warning was too late. The guard had seen nothing but an incredible, menacing creature advancing toward the president. He had squeezed the trigger. The little flare from the pistol struck the ape's broad back. The creature's bestial face contorted in sudden agony. With a deep, almost human groan, it collapsed. James Carthew, with a cry of horror, jumped forward. His face was paper white as he bent over the creature. The ape's eyes, strange blue eyes had a dying light in them as they looked up at the president. The creature strove to speak. From the hairy throat came a hoarse, gurgling rattle, dying words thickened to a brutish growl, but dimly recognizable. Jupiter, the Space Emperor, causing atavism, the thing gasped hoarsely in dying accents. It sought to raise its head, its fading blue eyes weirdly human in agonized apprehension and appeal as they looked up at the president. Danger from... And then, as it sought to form another word, life ebbed swiftly, and the creature sank back, its eyes glazing. Dead! Carthew exclaimed, trembling violently. My God, it talked! Cried the white-faced guard. That ape talked! It's not an ape, it's a man, said James Carthew hoarsely. Oh my gosh. I mean, this era of sci-fi always have aliens looking like something on Earth. Apes, POCs, humanoid. It's kind of annoying. Personally, I want aliens to be way more alien. Yes. I do as well. Get out, all of you, Carthew whispered, making a gesture with his trembling hand. Horrified, still staring at the monstrous, hairy corpse on the floor, they withdrew and left the president and his secretary alone with the macabre corpse. Good God, those blue eyes! It couldn't be Sperling! Cried the shuddering young secretary. Yes, it's Sperling, all right, James Carthew said softly. I recognized him by his eyes, a moment too late. John Sperling, our best secret agent, transformed into that dead brute on the floor. You sent him to investigate the horror on Jupiter, and he fell prey to it, Bonnell exclaimed hoarsely. He changed like those others out there, from man to brute, yet he was still man enough to try to get here and make his report. The pale young secretary looked beseechingly at his chief. What is it that's causing that horrible wave of monstrosities out on Jupiter? Hundreds of cases in the last month, hundreds of men changing into apish brutes. Whatever it is, it's something bigger than just Jupiter, Carthew whispered haggardly. Suppose this strange plague spreads to the other planets, to Earth. Bonnell blanched at the hideousness of the suggestion. Good God, that must not happen! The president looked down at the hairy body that a few weeks before had been the keenest, most stalwart man in the whole force of the Planet Police secret agents. Sperling may have written out a report, Carthew muttered. Secret agents are not supposed to do so, but... Considering the advancements in technology depicted in Captain Future, especially with the use of uranium clocks, you get a sense of how sci-fi authors envisioned the evolution of energy sources from their time. Do you think these unique and futuristic energy tech in this era inspired real-world research? Oh, absolutely, Consilience. It is very obvious in some cases. If you look at something like the Star Trek communicator from science fiction, like the original series communicators became flip phones. The communicators from the Next Generation were starting to see wearables that essentially are exactly that. It's technology that shows up in science fiction is often the goal of certain research. Like, there's, I think, the wonder and fascination of imagining the future, and so often sci-fi, especially hard sci-fi. So there's a difference in science fiction between hard sci-fi and soft sci-fi, and there are gradations, and those are very general categories. Hard sci-fi refers to science fiction where the story is grounded in actual science and could plausibly happen based on the science as we understand it at the time it was written. Soft sci-fi has a more of a fantasy element to it. So the Force in Star Wars would be an example of soft sci-fi. It's very much a fantasy element where there is no basis in science for the Force as we currently understand science. So hard sci-fi where there's a grounding in understood science and a projection to the future of what technology might be like tends to lead people to try and create that technology. And we end up with things like tablet computers, which are very much like the pad in Star Trek. And indeed, there are scientists who will say that their reason for creating something or developing a certain science is because they saw it in sci-fi and wanted to see if it was possible. So we know that it directly affects. People don't shave, and all of a sudden they're apish brutes. The amount of science folks who geek out about old sci-fi, they're like, I totally went to uni to learn to make a real one of those. Exactly, yes. This is why you can't read sci-fi stories from this era. The apish brutes thing, yeah. All the so-called golden age folks were almost always science first fiction as a bit of an afterthought. Fascinating to see how sci-fi like Star Trek prefigured technologies like flip phones and wearables. Are there other examples from Captain Future? I don't know. Honestly, I'm not super familiar with Captain Future, so if other people know of some specific technologies from Captain Future that they want to call out in chat, I would be interested to know, because this is my first introduction to Captain Future, but apparently there's a whole anime, so I imagine there might be something. I'm not specifically aware of it myself. Let's see. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. Let's see. To the actual introduction of Captain Future. Perilous emergency. Apparently they put out a call, like the bat signal, for Captain Future. Alright, I'm gonna pick it up here. The president saying, he will be here. He's never yet failed to answer our call. As a matter of fact, I'm here now, sir, said a deep, laughing voice. It came from the balcony outside the window. A big, red-headed young man had miraculously appeared there, as though by magic. Kurt Newton, Captain Future, cried the president eagerly. Imagine it's like calling the Kool-Aid Man. Kurt Newton was a tall, well-built young man. His unruly shock of red hair towered 6'4" above the floor, and his wide, lithe shoulders threatened to burst the jacket of his gray synth silk zipper suit. He wore a flat, tongue-styked belt in which was holstered a queer-looking pistol, and on his left hand was a large, odd ring. This big young man's tanned, handsome face had lines of humor around the mouth, crinkles of laughter around the eyes. Yet behind the bantering humor of those gray eyes, there lurked something deep and purposeful, some hidden, overpowering determination. Captain Future, repeated James Carthew to the big young man. But where's your ship, the Comet? Hanging onto the wall outside by its magnetic anchor, answered Kurt Newton cheerfully. Here come my comrades now. A weird shape had just leapt onto the balcony. Oh my, we have a raid from 16-Bit Eric. Hello, Whimsies. Hello, welcome to Archival Adventures. I am Anthony Wright Day Hernandez, Community Collections Archivist at Virginia Tech, also known as Rogan27. And you're joining Archival Adventures, my once a week stream where we take a look at something from the archives and special collections, and see what we can find. Everybody, this is 16-bit Eric and the Whimsies. Welcome in the Raiders, and if you're not already following Eric, you should be, because 16-bit Eric is an absolutely wonderful human. Eric's channel, The League of Whimsy, is a great place to hang out. You'll learn tons of stuff about role-playing games, and just various topics. Occasionally you'll learn about Buddhism. It's just a great place to be, and a wonderful community. Welcome in, everybody. It's great to have you. And Eric, thank you so much for the raid. Thank you for dropping the shout out there. Yeah, hello everybody. Hello. Let me see who. Oh gosh, there's a few of y'all here. Let's see. Hi, Pretty Witchery. Hi, Blue Rooster. Hi, Siege Lyric. Baba Yeehaw, hello. Lord Portico, thank you so much for the 37-month resubscription. 37 months. Shadows of Life. I don't remember if you were here, but hi. Triamus, hello. Hi, Fluidan. THL Katrina, hello. It's good to see everybody. So many months, exactly. 16-bit Eric and the Whimsies is the perfect band name. Indeed, it is actually the perfect band name. So what we are doing today, we have a collection here of called the William J. Heron Speculative Fiction Collection. In it, we have quite a few. I say quite a few. I think it's like 4,500 or so. Or might be 45,000. I don't remember. I'd have to look at the thing again. Anyway, we have a lot of pulp speculative fiction from early sci-fi times, from British, Australian, and US magazines. The one we're looking at today is Captain Future, which was an attempt to give space opera the same treatment that superheroes had gotten. So it's basically a space opera superhero, which I guess the only example that really springs to mind for me right now is Guardians of the Galaxy or something like that, where you've got space opera, but it's sort of also superhero-ish. Anyway, we were just meeting Captain Future. This is the very first. I really enjoy the concept of Wizard of Science. Exactly. We were just meeting Captain Future at the very beginning of the very first issue here. This is not yet like comic book. This is Winter of 1940, which based on the subsequent issues being spring and summer, I take to mean January through March. So happening during World War II. There were only 17 issues. This magazine, Captain Future, died out, ceased publication due to paper shortages caused by World War II. Yeah, so we just met Kurt Newton, who is Captain Future. And he is, we got a physical description here. Let me find. Kurt Newton was a tall, well-built young man. His unruly shock of red hair towered 6'4" above the floor, and his wide, lithe shoulders threatened to burst the jacket of his gray synth suit zipper suit. He wore a flat, tongue-tight belt in which he was holstered a queer-looking pistol, and on his left hand was a large, odd ring. The big young man's tanned, handsome face had lines of humor around the mouth, crinkles of laughter around the eyes, yet behind the bantering humor in those gray eyes, there lurked something deep and purposeful, some hidden, overpowering determination. Wait, what? Historical terms, the one enemy Captain Future couldn't defeat? Quite possibly. I don't know. Apparently, there's a whole anime. There is a Captain Future anime that came out in 1978 and has 53 episodes. Wait, Odd Ring? Is he a Green Lantern? I don't know. What? Oh! I was like, what's going on? Frank Voigtkamp, thank you so much for the follow. The lack of paper is one... Oh, yes, the lack of paper is the one enemy he couldn't defeat. Indeed so. The anime is awesome. It was a huge success in Germany. Awesome! Still quite popular. See, I had never heard of it, and now I need to know. I'm going to have to check that anime out. Like, I did not know about Captain Future until today, honestly. This is my introduction. So, all right, we were just about to meet his comrades. Trying to find it so you can watch it when you get home. If you find it, Sterling, send me a note where you found it, because I'd be curious to know if it is available somewhere. I got lost, sorry. A weird shape had just leapt onto the balcony. It was a man-like figure, but one whose body was rubbery, boneless-looking, blank white in color. He wore a metal harness, and his long, slitted green, unhuman eyes peered brightly out of an alien white face. Following this rubbery android, or synthetic man, came another figure, equally as strange, a great metal robot who strode across the balcony on padded feet. He towered 7 feet high. In his bulbous metal head gleamed a pair of photoelectric eyes. The robot's left hand carried the handle of a square, transparent box. Inside it, a living brain was housed. The front of the case were the brains... Oh, in front of the case... In the front of the case were the brain's 2 glittering glass lens eyes. Even now they were moving on their flexible metal stalks to look at the president. "You know my assistants," Kurt Newton said shortly. "Greg the robot, Otho the android, and Simon Wright, the living brain. We came from the moon full speed when I saw your signal. What's wrong?" They renamed Otho to the German name Otto. You have the DVD box? Yeah, apparently it's supposed to be fairly faithful to the original content. We don't get an image of Simon Wright, the brain in a box, on the cover, but we do get Captain Future, we do get Otho, and we do get the android, we get Greg and Otho on the cover illustration, which really, really neat. "We've need of you, Captain Future. Dire need," James Carthew said haggardly. "You'll have to leave for Jupiter at once." "Jupiter?" The handsome young man's brows drew together. "Has something popped out there?" "A terror is growing out there," the president cried. "A black horror that you must stop immediately. Listen." And I'm just going to point out again, the language here and the need to, these are historical documents. The Raiders, we read through sort of the beginning of this, and the aliens, or the horror, the black horror, as it was termed here, is that people are devolving into ape-like creatures, which, combining that with calling it a black horror, and the illustration that we saw a little bit ago, there are just some elements there that come across as straying into racist depictions that honestly were not uncommon for the time that this came out, and probably are not the full intent of it. I think they're just pervasive of the culture that this was being written in. But yeah, there's a reason you threw out the historical terms. Giant, well-dressed monkey man. Yeah, I asked Google Bard to write a pulp story. Captain Future against the paper shortage, and apparently it knows the character. With his trusty companions Greg the robot, Otho the android, and Simon Wright, the living brain, he embarked on a mission to combat the paper shortage, determined to restore the flow of knowledge and inspiration. Triamus. That sounds... That does sound like it would be appropriate for what I know about Captain Future from looking at the encyclopedia entry and the introduction here and stuff like that. Quite interesting. Chapter 2, Out of the Past. The name of Captain Future, the supreme foe of all evil and evildoers, was known to every inhabitant of the solar system. That tall, cheerful, red-haired young adventurer of the ready laugh and flying fists was the implacable nemesis of all oppressors and exploiters of the system's human and planetary races. Combining a gay audacity with an unswervable purposefulness and an unparalleled mastery of science, he had blazed a brilliant trail across the 9 worlds in defense of the right. He and his 3 unhuman comrades, the living brain, the metal robot, and the synthetic man, were the talk of the system. Everyone knew that the scientific wizard's home was in some obscure crater on the desolate moon. People looked up at the lunar orb at night and felt safer because they knew that Captain Future was there, watching and ready. They knew that should any sinister catastrophe threaten the system, he would come forth to combat it. But who was Captain Future? What had been the origin of his trio of unhuman comrades, and how had he come to achieve his super scientific powers? That was a story that only the president knew, and it was perhaps the strangest story in the history of the solar system. 25 years before, a young Earth biologist named Roger Newton had dreamed a great dream. His dream was to create life, artificial, intelligent living creatures, who would be able to think and work to serve humanity. He had already made great strides toward the goal, and felt on the verge of success, but a certain unscrupulous politician with sinister ambitions had heard of Roger Newton's potent discoveries. He had made several daring attempts to steal them. There was danger to humanity if those discoveries passed into such hands, so Newton decided to seek a safe refuge in which he could work secretly. On a night in that June of 1990, the young biologist communicated his decision to his only intimates, his young wife Elaine and his loyal co-worker Simon Wright. Relentlessly pacing the big crowded laboratory of their secluded Adirondack farm, his red hair disordered and his lean, sensitive young face and blue eyes worried, Roger Newton addressed them. Victor Corvo's agents will find us here sooner or later, he asserted. Think of my discoveries in Corvo's hands. We must leave Earth, go to a place where he'll never find us. But where can we go, Roger? Appealed Elaine Newton anxiously, her soft gray eyes fretful, her small hand grasping his sleeve. Yes, where can we go? Simon Wright in his metallic... Yes, where can we go? Echoed Simon Wright in his metallic, unhuman voice. To one of the colonized planets? No, Corvo's agents would be sure to find us in any of the planetary colonies sooner or later, Newton responded. Then where is this refuge you speak of, if it's not on Earth or any of the planets? Demanded Simon Wright, his lens-like artificial eyes boring questionably into Newton's face. Simon Wright was not a man. He had once been a man. He had once been a famous aging scientist whose body was racked by an incurable disease. To save his brilliant brain from death, Newton had acceded to the old man's plea and had removed Wright's living brain from his body and encased it in a serum case in which it could live indefinitely. It's really eye-opening to see how historical context influenced the themes and language in these pulp novels. Like the portrayal you mentioned, I wonder what our blind spot is in today's fiction. Oh, I'm sure we have one. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm sure we have one. And also, in sci-fi, if you look historically, sci-fi, horror novels, things like that, where it's the unknown and it's the other, and that's frightening. The characterizations tend to be influenced by the time period. So, frightening and other, sometimes in European fiction, takes on characteristics that are Asian in origin, or stereotypically Asian, or stereotypically African, to make them seem otherworldly or alien. That's not uncommon to find. And or they'll go and especially American fiction, sophisticated alien people will be depicted as having the values of indigenous American tribes, because it's still seen as very other and very foreign and very exotic, and so those stereotypes get pulled in and applied generally to this alien other, and that's a problem, partly because it's a shortcut, and a shortcut is always going to be problematic in some way. If you look at something like, say, Star Trek, the aliens are always depicted as these monoliths. All Vulcans are the same. All the Andorians are the same. The Bajoran people are all the same. The Cardassians are all the same. The Romulans are all the same. All of them, their cultures are monolithic. But in reality, if all of these alien races existed on all of these planets, they would have as much genetic diversity, cultural diversity, language diversity as exists on Earth. They wouldn't be these monoliths. But for storytelling purposes, the aliens in science fiction take the place of national cultures. In, like, if you take a step back and look at exploration fiction, the sort of Age of Colonization type stories where people are going off to unknown lands and encountering indigenous populations, they're encountering a culture that has a language and a culture, and from the outside appears to be a monolith. And in science fiction, the aliens are taking the place of that indigenous culture that a sailor would have encountered on an island, which is why they end up being used monolithically rather than treated as a full planet of varied culture and language, etc. Captain Future does have a queer gun. Could be something such as the time they considered eating animals normal, or the time causing brain damage to other people was still legal. Yeah. Coming out of a period of heteronormative popular fiction, a lot of There's definitely been examples in film and television recently of white savior, where you've got a white person who goes into a non-white culture and becomes the exemplar of that culture over the course of a movie. There have been a couple of those recently. Single biome planet, yeah, Triamus. That's and that's one of the soft parts of Star Wars when it comes to science fiction. The Star Wars universe, all of the planets are single biome. If it's a desert planet, it's entirely desert. If it's a jungle planet, the whole thing is jungle. And all of the planets in Star Wars have breathable atmosphere. That's just how Star Wars is set up as a narrative frame. Avatar, yeah. White Savior reminds me of the Book of Mormon musical and the song "We Are Africa." Yeah, that would be a good example. So I've definitely seen there's been some white savior type stuff recently. The Middle East war, the war in Afghanistan, things like that, heavily influenced science fiction. So we ended up with a period of time where a lot of the science fiction that was being created ended up with depictions of aliens that are very similar to Iraqi and Afghani people. Or where you get aggressor aliens that are in some ways stand-ins for Al-Qaeda or the named insurgent type groups that were the nominal enemies during that conflict. So that's just what happens. That's science fiction is a depiction of the time it is written in. It is a means of interacting with the present by imagining the future. It's not really about the future. It might have great ideas about the future. Science fiction is about the present. That's part of why part of what I find fascinating about this genre as a whole is it's capable of exploring some difficult topics that we struggle to engage with otherwise. So I wanted to finish, let's see, at least the descriptions of the companions here. So we learned a little bit more about Simon Wright. I wanted to see, like, this is supposed to be telling us the origin of Captain Future himself. So they decide to move to the moon. I'm really curious. Apparently there is a collected stories that was published sometime in like 2009 that starts with like the actual beginning. Some of these have been turned into actual full novelizations and things like that. So if you're as intrigued by this as I am, I'm definitely interested enough that I probably want to read the novelizations as well as check out the anime, because it seems interesting. I definitely see it. Pretty Witchery, gelatinous cube, except it's not. That's the living brain. That's Simon Wright. That's the human brain in a box. But it does remind me of a gelatinous cube too. No, he's a cube now. That's the rules. This is really, really interesting. Oh gosh. Okay, so let's see. Our child can be born on the moon as well as on the earth, she declared. And as he hesitated, she added, "If you left me here, Victor Corvo would find me and force me to tell where you had gone." That is true, Roger. The brain's cold, incisive voice. "We must take Elaine with us. If we must, we must," Newton said resignedly, his face deeply troubled. "But it's a terrible place to take anyone you love, a terrible place for our baby to be born." 10 weeks later, Newton, Elaine, and Simon Wright, man, woman, and brain, sailed secretly for the moon in a big rocket crammed with scientific equipment and supplies. Upon the moon, beneath the surface of Tycho Crater, they built their underground home. There a son was soon born to the man and woman, a red-haired baby boy they named Curtis. And there, in the laboratory of the Lonely Moon home a little later, Newton and Simon Wright created their first artificial living creature, a great metal robot. Greg, as they named the robot, stood 7 feet high, a massive man-shaped metal figure with limbs of incredible strength. He had super sensitive photoelectric eyes and hearing, and a brain of metal neurons, which gave him sufficient intelligence to speak and work, to think and to feel primitive emotions. But though Greg, the robot, proved an utterly loyal, faithful servant, he was not of high enough mentality to satisfy Newton. The biologist saw that to create more man-like life, he must create it of flesh, not of metal. After more weeks of work, they produced a second artificial creature, an android of synthetic flesh. This synthetic man they named Otho. He was a rubbery, man-like creature whose dead white synthetic flesh had been molded into human resemblance, but whose hairless white head and face, long, slitted green eyes, and wonderful quickness of physical and mental reactions were quite unhuman. They soon found that Otho, the synthetic man, learned more quickly than had Greg the robot. "Otho's training is complete," Newton declared finally. His eyes shone with triumph as he continued. "Now we'll go back to Earth and show what we've done. Otho will be the first of a whole race of androids that soon will be serving mankind." Elaine's face lit with pure happiness. "Back to Earth. But dare we go back when Victor Corvo is there?" "Corvo won't dare bother us when we return as supreme benefactors of humanity," her husband said confidently. He turned to the two unhuman beings. "Greg," he ordered, "you and Otho go out and remove the rock camouflage from the rocket so that we can begin to make it ready for the return trip." When the huge metal robot and the rubbery android had gone out through the airlock chamber to the lunar surface, Elaine Newton brought her infant son into the big laboratory. She pointed up through the glassite ceiling, which framed a great circle of starry space. There, amid the stars, bulked the huge, cloudy blue sphere of Earth, half in shadow. "See, Curtis," she told the baby happily. "That is where we're going. Back to the Earth you've never seen." Little Curtis Newton looked up with wise, gray baby eyes at the great sphere and stretched his chubby arms. Newton heard the airlock door slam. He turned surprisedly. "Greg and Otho, are you back so soon?" The voice of Simon Wright rasped with sudden alarm. "That's not Greg and Otho. I know their steps," the living brain cried. "It's men." Elaine uttered a cry, and Newton paled. 4 men in spacesuits, carrying long flare pistols, stood in the doorway. The face of their leader was revealed as they took off their helmets. It was a hawk-like face, darkly handsome. "Victor Corvo!" Newton cried appalledly, recognizing the ruthless man who had coveted his scientific discoveries. "Yes, Newton, we meet again," said Corvo exultantly. "You thought I'd never find you here, but I finally tracked you down." Newton read death in the man's triumphant black eyes, and the sight of his wife's bloodless face and horrified eyes galvanized the young biologist into desperate action. He sprang toward a locker in the corner in which his own flare guns were stored. But he never reached it. Jets of fire from the pistols of Corvo's men hit him in midair and tumbled him into a scorched, lifeless heap. Elaine Newton screamed and thrust her baby onto a table out of range of the guns. She then leapt to the side of her husband. "Elaine, look out!" cried the brain. She did not turn. The flare from Corvo's pistol struck her side, and she toppled to the floor beside her husband. Little Curtis Newton, upon the table, began to whimper. Corvo ignored him and strode past the two still forms toward the square metal serum case that held Simon Wright's living brain. He looked triumphantly into the glittering lens eyes. "Now, to finish you, Wright," he laughed. "And then all the powers gathered in this laboratory belong to me." "Corvo, you are a dead man now," answered the brain in cold metallic accents. "Vengeance is coming. I hear it entering now. Terrible vengeance." Don't try to threaten me, you miserable, bodiless brain," Corvo jeered. "I'll soon silence you." Two figures burst into the laboratory at that moment. Corvo and his men spun, appalled, unable to believe their eyes as they stared at the two incredible shapes who had entered. The huge metal robot and the rubbery android. They stood, their unhuman eyes surveying the scene of death. "Greg, Otho, kill," screamed the brain's metallic voice. "They have slain your master. Kill them, kill them." With a booming roar of rage from the robot, a fierce hissing cry from the synthetic man, the two leapt forward. In less than a minute, Corvo and his three men lay horribly dead, their skulls smashed to pulp by the robot's metal fists, their necks broken by the android's rubbery arms. Then Greg and Otho stood still, gazing around with blazing eyes. "Set me down by your master and mistress," ordered Simon Wright urgently. "They may still live." The robot put the brain down by the two scorched forms. Wright's lens eyes rapidly surveyed the bodies. "Newton is dead, but Elaine is not dead yet," the brain declared. "Lift her, Greg." With ponderous metal arms, the huge robot raised the dying girl to a shifting position. In a moment, she opened her eyes, wide, dark, and filled with shadows. They looked at the brain and robot and android. "My baby," she whispered. "Bring me Curtis." It was Otho who sprang to obey. The android gently set the whimpering infant down beside her. The dying girl looked down at it tenderly, heartbreaking emotion in her fading eyes. "I leave him to the care of you three, Simon," she choked. "You are the only ones I can trust to rear him safely." "We'll watch over little Curtis and protect him," cried the brain. "Do not take him to Earth," she whispered. "People there would take him away from you. They would say it is wrong to let a human child be reared by a brain and robot and android. Keep him here upon the moon until he grows to manhood." "We will," promised the brain. Greg and Otho and I will rear him safely." "And when he is a man," whispered Elaine, "tell him of his father and mother, and how they died. How his parents were killed by those who wished to use the gifts of science for evil ends. Tell him to war always against those who would pervert science to sinister ambition." "I will tell him," promised the brain, and in its toneless metallic voice was a queer catch. The girl's hand moved feebly and touched the whimpering infant's cheek. Into her dying eyes came a strange, far-seeing expression. "I seem to see little Curtis as a man," she whispered, her eyes raptly brilliant. "A man such as the system has never known before, fighting against all enemies of humanity." That is where we will leave the story. It's a great start. I'm very glad that we discovered this. I'm curious to know more. I definitely see the bones of like how they were trying to give space opera the sort of superhero treatment. I definitely see that. Oh no, not men! Yes, the genders. Man, woman, and brain. Ooh, some of the old science fiction fantasy horror radio shows are being republished as podcasts. That would be pretty awesome. all of all the ways to make someone into a robot, Cube Boy is a choice. I know Otho is an old Roman name, but I always think of Otho Sackville Baggins. Curse you and your dark handsomeness. Detective Zen, I love it. Oh, Baba, thank you for coming by. And if you ever feel like dressing up like a bat, don't do it. Triamus, there are some definite parallels between this origin story and Bruce Wayne, the Batman's origin story. I definitely see that. The parents killed the elderly caretaker. In this case, instead of Alfred, we have Simon Wright, who's just a brain in a box. But yeah, weirdly delightful. I agree. Now I want two robots and a baby. Oh my gosh, Detective Zen. Can you imagine? It's a decent story from what you flipped through. Yeah. I'm intrigued. I'm definitely gonna have to check out. According to the encyclopedia, there are some compilations that were published within the last couple of decades. So it's definitely a known story. It's not one I had encountered before. And I will be curious to see if I can locate easy to watch versions of the anime. I wonder if it's available for streaming from anywhere. I'm quite happy with our decision to explore more of the Spec Fiction collection. I'm quite happy with discovering Captain Future for the first time ever. But we are approaching the end of time for today's stream. We've been going for 2 hours. I need to make sure that an ad break doesn't start. So let me make that happen. And we'll close out. Next week is the first week of February, the first Wednesday of February. And we started the year off by looking at a journal written by the chief engineer of the USS Dakota during the American Civil War. And it turned out to be really interesting. And we didn't get nearly enough time with it. So the first Wednesday of each month, we're going to go back to it until we're tired of it. So next week on Wednesday, I will have the Peltz Journal, and we will pick up reading journal entries to learn more about the blockade of the Confederacy and the mission to destroy the USS or the CSS. I forgot the name of the ship. Anyway, they're supposed to kill an ironclad, which is a more advanced ship than the Dakota is. It's been quite interesting. There was drama. There was another ship that had their whole crew and their captain, like all their officers and their captain, thrown off the ship and replaced because they refused to try and take on this ironclad. Yeah, I'm curious to know more. So we will be picking that up next week. And then after that, coming up, I'm waiting for a spreadsheet to open because I can't remember the dates, and so I don't remember what the things are. Oh, yeah. So 2 weeks from today, I have a guest. Archivist Kat will be joining me 2 weeks from today, and we'll be looking at some NASA things from the James Avidabile papers. I'm going to have to learn how to pronounce this guy's name. Avitabile. So that will be an interesting time. So those are coming up. That's in 2 weeks with Archivist Kat joining me. And yeah, hopefully it was also hard to type. I know it's an unusual spelling, and I'm not certain how it's supposed to be. Hey, a guest! Everyone, look professional. No, I think it'll be awesome having Kat join. Kat will be the third guest I've ever had on the stream. So that'll be good. All right, let me take a look here. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna be raiding. I just need to check and see, where do we want to go, everybody? We have definitely have Stephen Joyce as an option. Who's playing Kerbal Space Program. Always a good time at Stephen's channel. I don't see... The aquarium does not appear to be live right now. No, it is. It has the open sea cam. Do you think having a hard to pronounce name is a requirement for being a NASA scientist? Detective Zen, it just might be. There are quite a few of them. Again, sadly, none of the wonderful new science streamers that I have discovered are on at this time, so we're not going to pop over there. I think we are going to pop in and say hi to Steven, just because it's a wonderful time, and Steven was lovely and popped by here and hung out for a bit, so we'll go on over there and say hello. Let me go ahead and set up the raid. And it would be lovely if you would join me and say hello to Stephen when we get there. Stephen is a wonderful streamer from Scotland. Makes lovely little tiny hats, has a great community, and it's just a joy to hang out over there. So I hope you will join me for the raid. Hopefully I will see all of you again soon. Like I said, next Wednesday, more of the USS Dakota Engineers Journal. 2 weeks from today, we'll have some NASA stuff. And there's more great stuff coming up in the future. The next time we visit the William Heron Spec Fiction Collection at the end of February, we'll be taking a look at Dianetics. So hopefully I will see some of you then, too. Until I see you next... Keep exploring history, everybody.